Hey guys, it's Jake here with eTrailer. Today we've got a 2024 Ford F-350 and we're going to be taking a look at, and I'm going to show you how to install the Firestone Red Label Air Helper Springs. Air Helper Springs, are also known as airbags, are going to help to support the rear end of your vehicle when you've got a heavy load in or behind your truck. This is going to install between the bottom of your frame and the top of your axle to help limit that travel. Now, if you're looking into suspension enhancement options, there are many different options out there on the market. You've got your Timbrens and SumoSprings, which are essentially just going to be bigger jounce bumpers that are going to help to, again, limit the travel, but they're going to engage sooner than your jounce bumpers would. The jounce bumpers that come on this truck are only about halfway to the axle, so that the back of the truck sags quite a bit before it reaches those. You get into your adjustable options, which are going to be your added leaf springs that you can kind of tweak the pressure of the spring so that it helps to add a little bit more support when you're towing those heavier loads. Or the ultimate way to help to support the rear end of your truck is going to be a set of these air helper springs. Now we're underneath our truck. We wanted to show you guys what the airbags look like when they're installed. You can see here they're going to mount to the top of our jounce bumper perch, which is just this little steel block here. It'll mount right to the top of that, which is attached to our leaf spring pack, and then it'll mount to the bracket that is attached to the bottom of our frame. This is what is going to do the physical limitation of travel in your vehicle itself. So when you've got that heavy load in the bed of your truck or behind on the hitch, it's going to help to reduce the amount of sag in the back of your truck when you're carrying those heavy loads. You can see how this airbag has a double convoluted design, which basically just means it's going to have two bubbles that are going to act like a spring, so they're designed to go up and down rather than it being one big airbag and it wanting to roll one side or the other. This is really going to help you to give you that stable base to carry those heavier loads. You also notice the steel roll caps on the top and the bottom that has a cable on the inside of that, and then the cap is rolled around the top of the airbag to make it nice and strong. The reason I like pointing out those steel caps is that one, for the stability of the cap itself, and two, if you ever take your truck into a shop that has a two-post lift and they have to hang the rear axle, or if you're just doing some repairs at home and you're wanting to lift up on the frame and drop the rear axle to do a repair or something like that, these airbags are safe to let the rear axle hang from them. There's a lot of other brands out there that you can't do that with because they're not built to support the weight from the axle pulling on them. The maximum carrying capacity of these airbags is going to be 7,500 pounds. Now, that is an extremely high rating. I do not recommend even getting close to that rating, even though this truck is a 1-ton. The carrying capacity in the bed is not even close to that. So it just goes to show you how well built these airbags are to be able to carry the load that you will be carrying. The max PSI rating is going to be 150 PSI and a minimum of 5 PSI. You will want to always keep 5 PSI in your airbags to keep them inflated so that when you're driving down the road, they do not damage themselves. When it comes to inflating and deflating these airbags, you will have a manual fill that comes with your kit. Actually, the airbags themselves come with 2 manual fills, but we've got a onboard air compressor hooked up. That brings me to my next point. You can carry a little portable air compressor. I know lots of different tool brands make portable air compressors that you can use to inflate and deflate these bags. But I'm telling you, if you use these for a little while, you're gonna want something on board so that with the flip of a button, you can inflate and deflate your airbags so that you can make your ride exactly what you want when you're going down the road. For this particular install, because we put the red label bags on, there are a set of 5,000 pound bags available that fit this truck too. But the owner of this vehicle does a lot of heavy hauling on his farm, so we put the bigger bags on, so we went with the bigger Firestone compressor. It's the heavy duty option. It's going to have a very high PSI rating too, and this is the remote that comes with it, but you can also use your phone to inflate or deflate your bags. Now, as far as the installation process goes for this set of airbags, it is going to be pretty involved, and you are going to have to be under your truck for the entire time when you're installing them. So if you have a friend that has a lift, it's definitely going to help you out. I do know dropping the spare tire out of your way is going to give you a lot more room. It is possible to do from the ground. It's just a little bit more comfortable to do on the lift. That's another reason why I highly recommend going ahead and installing an onboard air compressor too while you're doing it, It's a little bit more costly to do that, but while you're running all your airlines, you won't have to make any changes down the road. You install your airbags and your compressor at the same time, and then everything's good to go. To begin our installation, you're going to want to drop your spare tire out of the way. We don't have a heat shield here to worry about, so that helps us out quite a bit. You can see here we've got access to both of our jounce bumpers. We're gonna have to take both of those out. And anything that we do to one side, we're gonna do to the other. So we're just gonna show you one side, and then you can repeat that process on the other. We'll take a 15mm socket, and we're gonna get the two nuts that are holding our jounce bumper in place removed. And we'll just take this jounce bumper and set it to the side because we won't need it anymore. Now we're gonna have to take these studs out, and the way you get them out is you pry back a little bit on it with a screwdriver, and then we're gonna slide both of them towards this center hole. So we got that one out, do the same with this one. Now grab one of your brackets that has these two nuts welded to it. This is going to be the support bracket that goes up on the inside of the frame rail. We're going to put a couple of zip ties on it. You're going to want to run it through the square first and then come back through the bottom for the zip tie. That's how it's going to line up with our bracket. We'll lift up against it. These zip ties are just to help you control that bracket once it's up in the frame rail, because otherwise it's going to be very difficult and very frustrating to get your hardware in place. So run that up in there, hold on to this zip tie. We'll get it to fall down, reach up there, and we'll fish out that other zip tie. Pull that down, and then here we've got the zip ties to maneuver that bracket however we need to when we're bolting this next one up. Take your bracket that looks like this. They're going to be the same for the driver and passenger side. Our flathead bolts, you'll get 4 of these in your kit. There's 2 of them that are shorter. Save those for later. We're going to put those on the bottom side of the airbag. But this is going to just slide right into this hole, and then that smaller hole is designed for those zip ties to go through. So this part right here, these 2 hooks are going to go against our frame rail. I'm just going to lift this up into place, get our zip ties fed down through those holes. It really does help quite a bit to line these holes up so that we can get the bolts started. And we'll take that bracket, we'll lift it up into place. Make sure that those are flat up against the frame rail. We've got 1 bolt started already, and you can use these zip ties in order to line up your holes. Just take this, and you want to get it started by hand to make sure you're not cross-threading it, and you can kind of use that bolt to help you line it up too. Then we'll take a 5.5mm Allen key. We're going to get these snug down. I recommend getting them close to where you can still move this bracket. Make sure it's flat up against the frame rail, and then send them home. Then you'll want to grab a torque wrench and torque these down to the specifications on top of the airbag. We're going to take a razor blade or a set of diagonals, and you just want to cut these little zip tie ends off because we are done with them. Now we're going to take our bracket that looks like this. Again, everything on this kit is a mirror image for the other side, so it doesn't matter which one you use. We'll take our bracket that looks like this. We're going to set it on there. Take a flathead bolt, slide it up through the back side there. And we're going to take a flange nut, spin that on, and do the same thing right here. Hold that in place, spin this on, and then we're going to tighten these down and torque them. Next step in our process is going to be a little different for different applications. So we'll want to take a measurement from the top of this jounce bumper perch to the bottom of our bracket here, and you want to look in your instructions. They've got a chart, and it's basically going to tell you whether or not you need to use the spacer that's included. Our measurement is the larger measurement, which is in the 6-ish to 7-inch range. That means we're going to have to use a spacer. If you're putting this on an F-350, chances are you're probably going to have to use a spacer. Just double check with that measurement to know whether or not you're going to have to use it. That is with the truck unloaded, so just if you have anything in the bed of the truck, you want to take that out and let the suspension relax. Then we'll take our spacer, set it in place. You're going to have this little nylon bushing that goes underneath. It's just so that this is not metal on metal contact. We're going to have a longer flathead bolt in our kit. These are the two smaller ones that I was talking about earlier. Slide that up through the bottom. And then the easiest way I found to do this is if you can hold this in place and we can just spin this airbag on. Now we're going to take our air fitting. You'll notice it's going to have a little bit of Loctite on it, or a thread sealer on it. We're going to thread that into the top of this threaded portion here. And then we're going to spin this down until that thread locker is buried inside of that fitting. Then we can take this assembly with the airbag loose. We want it to be able to move a little bit, because what we're going to do is get it up there, test fit it, move this forward and backwards, however we need to in order to position it correctly. We're going to need to be able to spin it. We'll make a couple of marks, one on the airbag, one on this spacer, and one on the plate. We'll take it back off and we can torque down that bolt that's underneath. So this is what we were talking about with the airbag. Once you get it in place, you want to make sure it's flat up against your leaf springs, flat up against this bracket down here, and then the airbag can spin. You're going to want to spin it until it locks into that little tab up there, right there. So we've got it locked into place. You want to kind of take a look at it from a couple different angles. If it's like this, you don't really want that to be facing like that. So what ours is just all the way in. So we're going to take a marker, put a mark on that, take it off, and torque that bolt down. With your airbag assembly up in place, we're going to grab the bracket that looks like this. This little tab, you notice, is facing in. You'll want that to go behind the leaf spring pack, and that little tab is designed to go between the two U-bolts that go over our leaf springs. The only way to get these big carriage bolts to pass through is to hold this bracket up like this. And then try to slide them through the back side using the gap in the wheel. And we're going to grab 2 flange nuts for each side, get our bolts slid through here, and then put a flange nut on it. Going to run these in by hand. We're going to kind of leave all this stuff loose until the end, and then we can get everything tightened down. The next step in our process is we're going to have to put a support bracket underneath the bottom plate here. On the passenger side, you can use this bracket that comes in your kit. It's more of a universal fit. But on the driver's side, we're going to use that same bracket. We just have to cut half the tab off. So I've already done that on this one. It worked out great on the last kit that we did. There's just a kind of a hub here of different lines and electrical lines and stuff like that we have to work around. And we don't want to have to move that, so we just cut a little bit of this off and it'll still work just fine. This bracket's going to be installed just like this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually try to slide these bolts in from the back side. That way I can get my torque wrench on the nut side. Like that, slide this bracket over, and then thread on a couple of flange nuts. Then for our bottom support, we're gonna have to have something under here to strap underneath the axle, and then there's 2 sets of holes up here, whichever one works best we can use. So what we need to do is we'll take these 4 of these right angle brackets. You're gonna take them just like this, and you're gonna kind of fit them together. They have a little notch here. You slide them together, and that is going to be 1/2 of our strap. So it'll go like this underneath our axle to strap that up. So we'll just make another one of those facing the other direction, just like this. And then we'll have it like this. We need to take one of our carriage bolts and strap those together. We want to leave this loose, and then it's going to be kind of a game to be able to slide our bolts down through, make sure that this is in far enough, in far enough this way, and then up to the bottom of the axle. Take your long carriage bolts. It'll have this little collar up here at the top. Slide that down. We're going to try this first set, or the closest set to the inside of the truck first. If we need to, we can always move it back, but I'm trying to stay away from these bolts so that I can get back to them and torque them down. Then we can lift this little assembly up that we made. Take a flange nut, thread that on. We'll thread one on the other side too. Once we get these hand tight, we're going to come back with a 15mm wrench and tighten these down. This is pretty much the only way you can do this. And then we're going to have to use a crow's foot when we come back to torque these down. Then we're going to come back and tighten the rest of our hardware. And we're going to grab our torque wrench and come back and torque all of our hardware to the specifications and the instructions. Now making sure that our airbag is still positioned up to where that tab is locked in up there. We're going to take the large nut that comes in our kit and thread that onto the top of our airbag. You're going to need a 15/16 wrench in order to get this snug down. Now with all of our hardware in place, that's going to do it for the installation. The only other thing I wanted to make note of is that when you're doing the passenger side, it'll be the same exact process as on the driver's side, except first you're going to have a heat shield that you're going to have to put between the top of the airbag and the bottom of this top bracket. And the other thing is, again, you're not going to have to trim this little bracket here. You can just use the whole thing because you notice there is no wiring bracket in our way. The next step in the process is going to be running your airlines from the airbags to the back of the vehicle. To run your airlines, you want to start here at your compressor. You're going to have to put this fitting inside the compressor, just thread it in until you can't see the thread locker anymore, which is it's a red liquid that's on there. We'll thread that in, then we'll take a short piece of airline tube, go straight into a T, and then we'll take another short piece, go straight into the ECU. Coming out of the T, you'll want to go back, and then I like to go up over the frame so that it's protected. We're going to be on the back side of the frame, or really more so on top here. Go on top of the frame rail, and then you'll see we kind of travel along the side of the frame rail, zip tie it off to any factory wiring we can find. I always like to go over the shock mount so that we don't ever have to worry about it being damaged. And then you go into another T, come out of the bottom of the T, go into the top of the airbag, and then go out of the T, put some heat wrap over it because we're going over top of the exhaust. Go over to the passenger side, or actually to the driver's side. We'll go into another T, come out of the T bottom, go into the airbag, then go out of the other side of the T, go all the way back to the back of the truck where we're going to use one of the included brackets to mount up our air chuck. And this is what it's going to look like. This is going to be our manual fill if something ever happens, if maybe I'd say the most common reason of why you would have to use this manual fill is if years down the road your compressor ever locks up, or if you blow a fuse for some reason and you don't have another one of those fuses. This will at least let you air up and air down manually when you don't have access to that compressor. I want to bump our compressor up to 50 psi, not only to see if the compressor is working properly, which we can see it is, but also to check our fittings for any leaks. We'll go around with a bottle of soapy water, spray all of our fittings to make sure that we don't have any rapid air bubbles forming. Well guys, once you checked everything for leaks and you know that you don't have any, now if you do have any leaks, the way that you fix it is you pop that air line out, put a nice clean straight cut on it with a razor blade and put it back into the fitting. We have seen before where you may have to replace a fitting if it's been pulled out too far or damaged in the past. So just check all those. Once you don't have any leaks anymore, that's going to do it for the installation. Well guys, hopefully this video helped you decide whether or not the Firestone Red Label Air Helper Springs is right for you in your 2024 Ford F-350.